Hey guys, Steve here, Ponics. Today we're going to talk about
Growing with fishes. Growing with fishes.
Episode 256. This will be a little bit of an abbreviated episode. I've been really busy lately, in case you guys haven't noticed. Yeah, hopefully next year in January we'll get kind of back on a more regular schedule with the show. But thank you guys for joining me today. It is December 18th, 2025. And we had a bit of a crazy day today when it comes to cannabis news. And I figured we'd jump on and talk about some of the things that I am not really seeing on any of the discussions around the events that happened today. So I figured we kind of go through everything as far as what happened in the news today, what's going on, and what the implications of the news today about Schedule 3 cannabis rescheduling is going to do to the industry that we love. So yeah, I spent quite a bit of time going through this today, trying to figure out exactly what it means and kind of what are some of the likely things that could happen. Or, and then I'm going to give you kind of my guess as to what's going to happen in the next week or two. We may or may not have some friends joining us. I do not have a guest book tonight, so it was just kind of like an impromptu, because of the events of the day and it lining up with Thursday, that seemed like a great idea to pop on. So, all right. So first off, let's get to this part here. So what happened today? Well, if you have not looked at your phone all day, cannabis has now been moved to Schedule 3 per executive order. Now, this does not immediately make it Schedule 3. It's still officially Schedule 1. So if you got arrested today at the federal cannabis crime, you're still charged as if it's a Schedule 1. But it basically kind of tells the DEA to stop being an asshole and to get with the program and make it Schedule 1 or Schedule 3. So and what Schedule 3 is things like testosterone or Tylenol with codeine, things that are pharmaceutical, but at the very lowest tier of what pharmaceutical is. And what this seems like is kind of a gift to the pharma companies without really doing much to help any of the cannabis industry, but we'll get into that in a bit. But as you can see here, most of the United States allows recreational or medical cannabis in one form or another, with the exceptions of a handful of states. And what's funny is like Georgia does allow cannabis growing. I've grown legal cannabis. I know North Carolina also has a medical program, so I don't really think this data on this chart is completely accurate. I've personally grown in two of those states with clients that were legally operating, so I'm not quite sure what that's about. But I can tell you that at least in the graphic here is not correct. What is also interesting is how this lines up with the THCA changes, and it really seems like they're trying to squeeze the cannabis market out quite a bit. But basically, yeah, they also specifically address CBD, which is another thing that they talked about today during the conference, the press conference. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. It could go really good. It could go really bad. The biggest implication, I think, is that you're going to end up with ISO certifications being required in terms of lab safety and lab certification of the equipment and the structure itself. The same way that you have like C1D1 for hydrocarbon extraction, I think you're going to start to see the different, and it's escaping me off the top of my head what the current ISO certification is for like edibles and stuff like that. But there's some, basic standards that a lot of people have already following, kind of knowing this is coming. Anyone that's been a client of mine for a while is I always tell people do concrete floors in the cultivation. Make all of your labs, ISO certifiable, because when the feds finally change their rules, that's going to be an issue. So that's definitely going to be part of what's coming. But yeah, just for the record, like I was saying earlier, nothing has actually been changed yet when it comes to the actual rescheduling. It just basically is he ordered the DEA to change the scheduling, but they still have to actually change it and give the final ruling, per federal law. Another thing is that this is really going to change the 280E tax issue. So for those of you that don't work in the cannabis industry, 280E would under normal circumstances, prevents any cannabis company from having any business expenses that they could write off. So, travel expenses, the plastic bags for, the alcohol for cleaning, the mops and the sponge, all that stuff. Normally, in your normal business, you could write that off as business expenses, but under cannabis law, you could not. So previously, what you had to do is set up a shell company, shell in quotes, that was a management company, right? So you would set up a cultivation facility, and like the owners and maybe like one other person were actually on the actual list of employees. Everyone else was hired by a management company that then was, the management company is then hired by the cannabis company, but the management company then can write off all of its expenses separately because they don't own the cannabis side of it. So that used to be the fun, business structure solution to 280E. It also used to be one of the very first questions that investors would ask you if you were in the cannabis industry, is how you plan to address that. And depending on what your answer was an instant litmus test for a lot of people. So, it doesn't, one of the things that, it could also open up in the future is it could open up, interstate commerce. If it's Schedule 1, that was impossible. Now that it's Schedule 3, that definitely opens the way for the potential, structure of allowing interstate commerce, which would be great for Northern California or anyone on the West Coast or Colorado, other places that have higher altitude, Arizona, another place that would get a lot of benefit from that. That could then ship their cannabis, to other states at times of year where it's not as easy to grow, or also just there's a high demand for Northern California weed, just culturally and historically. So it could really open up a lot of give a breath of fresh air to the economy in Northern California and Oregon in particular. Could if interstate commerce is allowed, that could really open things up. It doesn't immediately allow that, but it is definitely something that is now potentially legal under the new structure. State licensing frameworks, those shouldn't be affected. So any currently operating business, shouldn't, in theory, get shut down because they're operating a business that's now, suddenly not in accordance with federal law. That's one thing that I think a lot of people are worried about, was that them revoking that, and it might happen down the line, but I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. One of the other things it won't do immediately is change transportation laws. So like, airports and the mail and all that stuff is still restricted until they deschedule it. So that's definitely something. But if you had a prescription, you might be able to order it from like a prescription company that then is allowed to transport it. So that's something that, like, again, could open up a little bit. With the 280E and some of the other tax stuff, it definitely could make things easier for businesses and help a little bit economically. Sorry, I'm just going through all my notes that I wrote together doing all the research for this episode today. But also, like, if you get busted with it, like, it's still a federally controlled substance, so it's still no different than getting like busted with pills or something like that. You're still in violation of the law. You're just not quite as much as a violation. And then it also means that it's going to be much easier for DEA registration and FDA registration of new cannabis derived drugs and compounds. So you're going to see more. What was it called? Sativex and the CBD version. The name is escaping me right now, but you're going to see more of that crap, where it's going to be a single cannabinoid or single isolate derived compound, and they're going to push it as a drug. That's the kind of crap you're going to see a lot more of right now. And I could see them also doing like if it's not a pharmaceutically produced cannabis derivative, well, then it's not actually cannabis medicine. It's not actually the medical part. Only pharma companies make the medical part. I could see them doing a big push like that. And then one of the other things that I haven't heard anyone talk about is all the trigger laws. So a whole bunch of different states in the United States have trigger laws, which say if the federal government ever reschedules cannabis, they will then move to be in line with the new federal guidelines. So basically, like, if the feds legalize it, then they will. Or if the feds change their scheduling, then they will have a review of what they should do on the state law. So you have a whole bunch of states. So you have Let me go back down to I tried to sort this out into state lists because it made a lot more sense. But basically, everybody falls into three categories. So, states that have automatic conformity with their trigger laws. States that schedules tend to flip automatically unless it's objected to. So, these are places like Alabama, Arkansas, Idaho, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Kentucky, Louisiana, Michigan, Nebraska, Nevada, um, New Hampshire, New Mexico, North Dakota, Oklahoma, Rhode Island, South Carolina, North Dakota, Tennessee, Texas, Utah, Vermont, Virginia, Washington, West Virginia, Wisconsin, and Wyoming all have automatic schedule conformity mechanisms under their state laws. So all of those states will automatically switch to enforcing the federal guidelines. Now, some of those have legal cannabis, right? And those won't be affected. But for instance, if you get busted in Texas or Tennessee, well, now it's going to be treated as a Schedule 3 drug instead of a Schedule 1 drug because their state automatically says that um, the like sentencing guidelines and the like what charges to press and all that stuff should line up automatically with federal charges. So that could mean some reprieves for people that are in jail already in those states that I just listed, because those state laws are going to automatically conform to the new thing. So they could go back and petition that, depending on what the state, not all states allow that, but most states, you could go back and talk to a lawyer and then be like, hey, like, can I be resentenced under the Schedule 3 guidelines instead of Schedule 1? It's definitely something that people are going to have access to, next year, once this actually goes into full effect. States that require action, no automatic trigger, but they have a law that says that it will basically be reviewed upon changing of schedule, is Alaska, Arizona, California, Colorado, Connecticut, Delaware, Florida, Hawaii, Maryland, Massachusetts, Montana, New York, and Oregon. So those states, if there's a change in the federal scheduling of a controlled substance, they will then review it and see if they need to make a change on their level. And then on the discretionary ones, so the states that might prompt a review, it might not. They don't have anything that's like on the books that says they have to. Is Pennsylvania, Ohio, North Carolina, New Jersey, Missouri, Mississippi, Minnesota, Maine, Kansas, and Georgia. So those ones don't have any like legal obligation to automatically change their drug scheduling laws on a state level. Puerto Rico, Virgin Islands, I tried to find information on them. I wasn't able to find anything definitive on that. I just ran out of time. But I did try to look at some of the other provinces. So basically, like in prohibition states, if you have a criminal case, that's, you're in a better situation now, with it being Schedule 3 instead of Schedule 1. That's certainly going to help you quite a bit if you're in a bad situation. If you're a home grower, so like currently this doesn't change home growing, but long term they definitely could I could see a crackdown on home growing on a federal level. That's one of the reasons why I've been so anti auto flowers, because if they just say, oh, home growers can only grow auto flower, well then they're going to get their taxes because they're going to tax every seed and they're going to know exactly how much is in production, and that's just not good for anyone. So keep those seed collections. If you have a bunch of seed collections, refresh them this year while everything is still semi-kosher, because we might need to go back to the dark days, the way it used to be. Another thing that says, like, will a pharma production be forced to meet pharma standards for cannabis production? And it's like, well, like federally, yeah, like they really are going to enforce the ISO certs and all the rest of it. And that's something that I think is like going to be the biggest thing, especially for anyone that doesn't have extra money or like isn't getting into the industry now. A lot of facilities are built where you would have to do almost a complete teardown and rebuild to make that thing ISO certified. And that's gonna fuck up a lot of farms. You're gonna see a lot of people that are really good at what they do that simply just can't afford to redo everything, rebuild their greenhouses, rebuild their extraction labs, rebuild any other stuff into an ISO certification. So those people are just that sucks. They're gonna get screwed by this, and it's just bullshit. But for anyone doing new construction, if you're doing a smaller scale facility, look into the gas and oil industry. They have this like C1D1 testing labs that you can buy, that are roll-off testing labs, and even non-C1D ones that you can buy from the oil industry and gas industry where they do their testing and stuff like that. Those are great for kitchen labs that you can buy that are ISO certified or very easily ISO certifiable if you're trying to rapidly get to market. But otherwise, you're looking at, pharma, drug, hospital, those types of places that, can meet ISO certifications. Or you're looking at, pretty expensive, remodelings of your facilities, including cultivation. I think you're going to see an end of outdoor cultivation, and anyone not growing with concrete floors and super sanitized is going to get cracked down on pretty quickly. I think you're going to see that it end up looking more like Germany or some of the other ultra restrictive markets. Israel's another one that's super restrictive like that. I think that might be in fact, Israel might be even a good example of how they've like super pharmatized everything. And, just one more piece of toxic culture from that horrible genocidal country. But they're probably a really good example of what the market very well could look like in a year from now, where you have this, more or less pharma takeover of the industry, and little to no, recreational that's, allowed to survive. So, yeah. As far as what I think is going to happen, like I said before, I think you're going to have ISO certification for all of your lab equipment, all your labs, all your cultivation, all of that stuff is just going to be forced into that much higher standard. And if you aren't, ready to meet that, either go underground or find a new hobby. I don't know. It's I don't see much good coming of this, but I hope I'm wrong. So shout out to chat. We got Fire Chipper, Chad Westport, Guerrero Grows, a bunch of other awesome people. Glad to see you guys here. Anyways, I don't have a whole lot else to go over today. Like I said, this is more of an impromptu episode just to kind of cover some of the points that I haven't heard people talk about. Like I've heard a lot of people talk about many aspects, but I haven't heard anyone talk about the trigger laws that automatically change the scheduling, which has huge implications to sentencing guidelines, which I think really needs to be highlighted more because again, a lot of people's lives are they're sitting in jail right now because they have not, because of the scheduling change. So I think we can really help a lot of people, and it'd be great to kind of set up like a legal fund to help get those people out of jail, or you know lobby Congress to include that on any kind of regulatory bills that those people are allowed to have some level of legal aid to kind of help their situation, because people shouldn't continue to be punished for something that's legal now. So as far as content, I have some cool stuff. An interview is lined up for next year. January, I'm hoping to have some more content to get out to you guys. I've been working real hard on a couple of cool projects. You'll be able to find a couple of those in stores next year. We'll have more information on that soon. Once we get the sales live, which should be in January, I will do a whole video on that, and that'll be fun. And then yeah, hopefully get some more cultivation and extraction going here in California. It's taken a little while to get everything remodeled and get everything together, but we're finally getting there. So yeah, I'm just working on that stuff and doing the family thing, and yeah, just kind of working on the book, working on a bunch of new content for both the masterclass and cannabis masterclass. So if you take either of those, we have some more cool content coming on that, especially a bunch of new microbial stuff that I worked on some new content for. So that's coming. And yeah, other than that, just been busy doing holiday stuff. Thanks everybody for continuing to support the show over the years. We are at almost 10 years now that we've been doing the show. So yeah, I just appreciate all y'all's support, and we'll have more content for you guys again here soon. I have a bunch of cool breakdowns from Matt Powers' talk I did last year at his conference. Be sure to check out Matt Powers' new Our Future conference, r-future.com. The next conference, I believe, is January 14th or 15th. So if you're looking for a really great online free conference to check out with lots of awesome educators from other aspects of cultivation. Be sure to check that out. And then I will start clipping up my talk from last year. I did a whole talk on advanced natural farming, so I did just weirder natural farming inputs that most people haven't heard of that are in the KNF space. So I will have that. I'm going to try to break them down into individual videos rather than releasing the whole 2 hour talk, because I think you guys will enjoy it better, and I maybe add a little bit to each topic. So that'll be on and coming in the next few weeks. I'm gonna have I think the first release before Christmas, so check that out. And then yeah, we'll have some cool content. I'm gonna be traveling to Brazil at some point in February, March, or April for a week or so. So we'll have um some cool content from down there. I just gotta wait and figure out what date, but we'll be going and doing some filming down in Brazil, so that'll be really sweet. And yeah, that's the only international trip I have, at least between now and July. So at least that I'm aware of currently. But I will let you guys know, and we'll have some cool grow content from the hills up there. All right, guys. Have a good holiday. If I don't do another show beforehand, be safe. Love your loved ones that are still with you. A lot of them pass sooner than you wish they would. So yeah. I hope to see you guys again soon. And like I said, watch out for more videos next week. I will have some new content out, and then we will have some new podcast episodes in January. Cheers, everyone. And thanks all for all your support over the years.